It is always a pleasure, always an honor to welcome Senator Ted Cruz from the great state of Texas to the Chris Salcedo Show. Senator Cruz, welcome back, sir.
Thank you, Chris. Great to join you.
All right. First question I have for you. President has gone to court to prevent fraudulent votes from being counted. Now, you have supported his right to do so, but the biased press and those in it are insisting, number one, the president concede. They're also insisting that senators like you accept a guy I call Beijing Biden as the president-elect. And you were called out by one of these biased journalists. I want to play that soundbite and get you to respond. Listen to this. Hold on.
I mentioned Ted Cruz, who are like the Japanese soldiers who come out 30 years after the end of the war and out of the jungle and say, is the fight still going on? What do you expect the mood to be inside Senate Republicans, as they begin to think perhaps their future is no longer so directly tied to Donald Trump?
Your reaction, Senator Cruz?
Well, look, it's not surprising that the mainstream media has a partisan bias, and Chris Wallace is one of the worst, as we saw in the debate that he moderated, where he might as well have put on a big foam finger saying Joe Biden #1. I mean, it was his biases that have been there for a long time, but so has the entirety of the mainstream media. The mainstream media was always bad, but with the election of Donald Trump, they got exponentially worse. I think Trump broke the media. The relevant point here is the media don't get to decide the presidency of the United States. That's the voters. The American people get to decide that. And yes, we had an election 9 days ago, but we now have a series of contested results. We have recounts that are proceeding. We have litigation that is challenging the results, and an election isn't final till the results are final. And so everyone watching should just give a little bit of time to let the process play out. The objective should be clear. Count every single legal vote and ensure that votes that were illegally cast, that were fraudulently cast, are not counted. And we have a process to determine that, and that process is ongoing right now in the legal system.
All right, so now Georgia has ordered a recount and recanvass. And this is bad news for the Democrats. Of course, they're sweating it out. I want you to detail, if we find as much voter fraud as many folks suspect is there in Georgia, not only will it impact the presidential race, but also a key Senate race there, because Mr. Perdue is just this close from getting 50 plus 1 and avoiding a runoff. That's key, yes?
Well, it would be enormously impactful if David Perdue could avoid a runoff. It would mean we would only have 1 seat on the ballot on January 5th instead of 2. Either way, Georgia on January 5th is going to have massive consequence, because what's at stake there is control of the Senate. And if Democrats win both of those Senate seats, we go from 52-48 to 50-50. And with 50-50, if Joe Biden is president, it means Chuck Schumer is majority leader, and they have no check at all. It means the most radical policies of the far left they can ram through. If Chuck Schumer is majority leader, they end the filibuster. They pass massive tax increases. They enact the Green New Deal, destroying millions of jobs across this country. They add 2 new states designed to bring in 4 new Democratic senators. And they pack the U.S. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court goes from 9 to, in all likelihood, 13 justices. They put 4 radical leftists on the court, all designed to take away our fundamental rights, our free speech, our religious liberty, our Second Amendment. All of that is on the ballot in Georgia in just 2 months.
I understand. Now, I understand you and a lot of other senators are going to be on the ground there in Georgia. Tell us what your role will be there. I would hope an extra set of eyes to make sure that everything is on the up and up, because I wish we had had more eyes around the rest of the country to do that, but also to give some moral support to some of the senators who may be running in a runoff, yes?
Well, there are two things going on. There's the legal challenge, and I certainly have been encouraging the Trump team to put the best lawyers on the ground to handle the legal challenge. I've offered my help, but I've also offered to help them in terms of ensuring that they have really talented litigators that can prove up their case and win in court. At the same time, there's the political endeavor of this special election that is occurring January 5th, and right now both Senate seats are on the ballot. So I'm going to be there campaigning. I'm going to be there really working to turn out Georgia conservatives, because if anybody stays home, if anybody for whatever reason is unhappy, there are certainly voters in Georgia, as there are everywhere, who are ticked off about what's happened in the presidential race so far. And if any of those voters decide, all right, to hell with it, I'm out of here, that's how we elect two liberal Democrats and hand control over the Senate over the far left. And so I'm really there to make sure that everyone in Georgia who loves liberty, who loves the Constitution, who believes in free markets, that every conservative and liberty lover in Georgia shows up and votes on January 5th.
Amen to that. We were very pleased to see you cross-examining former FBI Director McCabe the other day. And I was struck how he refused to answer the predicate that we all know was put out there to prosecute Mr. Flynn to keep the Russia-Trump collusion investigation going forward, which was this use of the Logan Act. Yet Mr. McCabe, when he was backed into a corner, watching right now Mr. Biden reaching out to foreign governments, which they tried to criminalize when the Trump team was coming in, he refused to answer why it's okay for Biden to do it, but it wasn't okay for the Trump team to do it.
Well, McCabe is clearly a slippery witness. I think he bears an awful lot of the responsibility for the politicization of the Department of Justice and the FBI, of the Obama administration, really turning it into a political weapon to target their opponents. When they went after General Flynn, this is a decorated three-star general, a war hero, and they decided they were going to go after him with everything they had, facts be damned, because they hated Donald Trump. It wasn't even that General Flynn was the target. It's just that General Flynn had said yes when Donald Trump asked him to become the incoming national security advisor. And that politicization was an incredible abuse of power. There is a long bipartisan tradition at the Department of Justice and the FBI of it being apolitical, of it staying out of politics and enforcing the law fairly against everyone. That's what we should expect the Department of Justice to do. That's what we should expect the FBI to do. And under James Comey and Andrew McCabe, it ceased doing that. It became an extension of the DNC. It became their Oppo research shop and their shop of dirty tricks designed to go after and attack and persecute those perceived to be political enemies. It really is shameful.
You and I both sat there and watched as the Trump team came in during the 2016 election and then thereafter, the Russia-Trump collusion narrative, which was hatched by guys like Mr. McCabe and Comey and the rest. And that was on the flimsiest of pieces of evidence. And we had an FBI investigation, a House investigation, a Senate investigation, and a falsely predicated special counsel investigation. This is a history that you and I know well.
Yep.
We now have hard evidence, a laptop from Hunter Biden. We now have hard evidence and testimony from Mr. Bobulinski. We now have hard evidence from a video allegedly leaked by dissidents in China. If it was proper and right to launch 4 investigations on Trump-Russia collusion, isn't it also proper to launch an investigation on Biden-China collusion, Senator?
Well, I think the investigation needs to follow the facts. So I'm not going to call for an investigation of Joe Biden's, and simply because he's on the opposite political side of me. But I do think the rule of law means that if you have facts, if you have a criminal violation, that needs to be investigated. I don't know what all is on that laptop. My understanding is the laptop is in the physical possession of the FBI, and I would certainly hope and expect that if there is serious evidence that is incriminating of a significant crime, that they would pursue that and enforce the law. That's what their job is.
No, I completely understand it. But again, just to press you a little bit on this, we have a mountain more of evidence against Mr. Biden and his ties with the communist Chinese government than there ever was against Mr. Trump and Russia collusion. I mean, certainly, if fair is fair, if we're going to launch 4 investigations against the president of the United States, Trump, certainly Mr. Biden can endure at least one government investigation with a mountain of evidence we have against him.
Well, and it's even stronger than you suggest in that not only was there not sufficient evidence against the Trump campaign to launch these investigations to begin with, but what they did rely on was complete garbage, the so-called Steele dossier. We now know that the primary subsource, in other words, the principal source of the materials in it, was himself suspected of being a Russian agent of trying to recruit senior members of the Obama administration to work for the Russian government and give secrets to the Russian government. The FBI knew this. They'd investigated it, and they didn't care. They didn't care if this thing was true or not. They didn't care if it was at all credible. So they were willing to be patsies, which is what the FBI senior leadership was, patsies for the Russians, because it let them go after Donald Trump, who they hated with a partisan fury. That even if someone watching this at home may not be crazy about Donald Trump, you ought to be deeply troubled about the nation's law enforcement and intelligence apparatus being used as a political weapon, because when one administration can do it, it means the next one can and the next one can, and that is a very dangerous thing. That is frankly an aspect of what we see in totalitarian countries and dictatorships, is using law enforcement to target your political enemies, and that's exactly what Barack Obama and Joe Biden did.
Folks, he is far from being a Japanese soldier lost in the wilderness. He's one of the greatest minds on the conservative side of the ledger. He is someone we're proud here in the great state of Texas to call our senator. Senator Ted Cruz, it's always a pleasure talking to you here on the Chris Salcedo Show.